So you are able to see, right, in the whiteboard. So okay, anyway, so we will start our class itself. Okay, so last class, we have started this finite element the last week. Okay, just I will check once. So the finite element method, we have started in our last class. So, we have derived all the variety, interesting things in FEM itself. So as the most important thing, the finite elements, it starts with the weak form, the equations of motion. Okay. So then, so we have this shape function. So this also we have seen. So shape functions are like, as already I told you, the cardinal functions are there, say, okay. So at that point, it is equal to 1 at all other points, say. So it will be 0 kind of a thing. So we have derived, I think, the shape functions, you see, for 1D, 2D, 3D, I think you followed, right? The simple things. And if you increase the more number of nodes, you can also increase the order of the polynomial itself, okay? And then we have seen some statics, how to do this one. Of course, you would have done this thing in great detail in your, other finite element course. And we have also seen in dynamics also. Okay, so here what we said in dynamics was, so you have a mass matrix, then we have the stiffness matrix are there. So how we solve is, so first we solve as a free vibration problem. So we solve as a free vibration. So we will find out, you see, the natural frequencies and other things. We also will find out, the eigenvectors. So only thing, like last class I already told you. So here when we discuss about the eigenvectors, say that is the mode shapes. Okay. So this, because the mode shapes amplitudes are not yet fixed. So we have two choices actually. One is orthogonality with respect to mass matrix, or we can do the orthogonality, say, with respect to this stiffness matrix. Okay. So last class, how did we do this eigenvectors? So any of you remember? So how we found out the amplitude of the eigenvectors? No. So if Qis are the eigenvectors, say, if you multiply by, Aj into this Qj, okay, so now we have said that there should be orthogonal to, this mass matrix, it should be 1. So I is equal to j when I is not equal to j itself, or as already I told you, you can do orthogonalize with respect to stiffness matrix also, but right hand side should be, omega square will come into picture. Okay, so this is what we have said. So by solving this, we will find out, the a1, a2, a3 of all the, the eigenvectors itself. Okay, so once these things are then we solve this forced vibration problem. Okay, so these are important steps, routinely in structural dynamics to say. Okay, so we use this finite element method in this format actual. Okay, so last class I think we already solved this problem. I think already, we have illustrated. So just briefly say. So we have taken this stepped bar problem. Okay, so where we have three things are there. So Q3, then we have Q2, and then this Q1, because the end is fixed set. So obviously your Q1 is equal to 0 itself. Okay, and we have assumed that now at this end point, so here we are subjecting to a load, so which is this type of a load, pulse load we say. Okay, versus T naught. Its duration is this thing, and it is applied at node 3, so P3 of T. So now this problem we solved in the last class. So the basic steps are there, says. Okay, the first thing is you solve free vibration. Okay, so you solve a free vibration problem, you find out the natural frequency. So already we did in our last class 1.985, so E by, you see, rho L square, so whole to the power of half kind of a thing we have. Then we have the second natural frequency also, so 5.159. okay, so E by rho L square, say, so whole to the power of half. And then we have this mode shapes also. So Q1 the first mode shape, then Q2 also we have the second mode shape. But as already I told you, so the amplitudes of these mode shapes are not fixed, okay, because of this one 1.186, and then you see 2.053. This is the second mode shape. Now similarly, say we have the first mode also, 1 by rho a l whole to the power of this half. So 0.8812 and then 1.526. So these are the eigenvalues and eigenvectors which you will get by solving our the free vibration problem. So now you assemble our Q matrix, say. So this Q matrix becomes 1 by rho al whole to the power of half. Okay. So we have 0.8812, then minus 1.186. So 1.5260, then you see 2.0530. So this is our eigenvectors, that is the mode shapes. Okay. So now the mass matrix also we already calculated in our last class. So rho al by 12. Okay. 1, 1, 2. What do you call this mass matrix? The mass matrix, if it is not diagonal, so what type of mass matrix it is? Can anybody tell us what type of mass matrix it is? So last week we told two types of mass matrices are possible in FEM. What are those and what is this mass matrix?
This is consistent mass matrix.
This is consistent mass matrix only. Okay. Or you can have lumped mass also. So lumped mass means you assume before starting the problem itself, I will lump at these points, and lumped mass means you have a diagonal matrix. So this is the most important thing actually. Okay. But which is better, which is this one, everything has its own advantages and disadvantages. Consistent means it is consistent with your stiffness, and it is much more close to the exact solution. Lumped things means you are making some assumptions, so there will be some amount of error when you do this lumped mass matrix. But advantage is mass matrix is diagonal, so you may have some advantages in the computation. Okay. Now stiffness matrix also, this also we wrote in our last class. So 2ae by l, so 3 minus 1 minus 1 1. So these are the stiffness matrices. So now so this is Q transpose, say. So this you have to, the amplitudes have to be estimated. So already that amplitudes have been estimated, so this you have to verify. Okay. So this should be 1001. So this is our thing. And if you do Q transpose KQ, say. Okay. Now what should be Q transpose KQ? Now what should happen here? So these are the mode shapes. So when you multiply mode shapes with respect to mass matrix, you get 1001, which means they're perfectly orthogonal. But the same Q transpose KQ, what happens? What should be in this matrix?
Omega square.
Omega square itself. Okay. So E by rho L square. So you can verify. Okay. So 1.985. Okay. Square, then 0, then 0. 5.159 square. So you can verify. So what are the omega squares for these problems? You can see here omega 1, omega 2 was there. So omega square, so 1.985 square, the square root goes away actually. Okay. So these is how the amplitudes and other things has to be estimated. So now after this you see the load vector has to be estimated. So this is a Q transpose multiplied by our P of T. Okay. So this also has to be estimated. So this is our rho al whole to the power of half. So this is our Q matrix. So that is a 0.8812, then 1.526, then minus 1.186, 2.0530, and then we have the node 2, say Q2. There is no load is acting, so this becomes 0, and we have P3. So this is my nodal, this one. So finally this becomes 1 by rho al whole to the power of half, say. So you multiply everything, so you have 1.526, so 2.053 multiplied by P3. Okay. So these are the loads which are acting at this one. So now so we have the problem has been completely written like this. So mu double dot you followed plus ku, say, okay, is equal to our the forcing function also. Okay. So everything has been done like this. So now so you can write, because the problem is uncoupled also, so our equations of motion will be like this. So these are the the coordinates. So E by rho L square 0 0 5.159 square, so multiplied by this one. So this is equal to our loads. So So 1 by you see rho AL whole to the power of half. Okay, multiplied by 1.526, 2.053 multiplied by P3. Okay, so these are the single degree of freedom system, the equations. So now if you write it in the scalar format, say, so you can also write this as the first equation, you see. So 3.941 times E by, you see, rho L square eta 1. So this is, 1.526 times P3 by, you see, rho AL half factor. So this is the first equation which you have. Then we have the second equation also, uncoupled equations of motion actually. So 26.62 times E by rho times L square eta 2. So this will be 2.063 P3 by using rho AL to the power of half actual. So these are our the equations actual. Okay, so now here because to solve the dynamics problems, you also require the initial conditions. So the initial conditions, if you assume the initial displacement and velocity, all of them are 0, say, so q into so if you assume all those things, you need the velocity and all the quantities are 0. So which means so this is also 0 and this is also 0. Okay, this vector. So both of them are the 0 0 kind of a thing you have here. So automatically so you get this the numbers, velocity and this one. So now finally so now already the solution for this problem. So this you can solve it in the finite difference the method, or you can even solve by with the closed form solution. See, generally in your structural dynamics, say, so already for this you can do by the Duhamel's integral. You would have already studied actually. Okay, so you can do it in the Duhamel's the integral kind of a thing, or you can do it in a finite difference also, but whichever method is convenient. So for this problem Duhamel's may be the more convenient for us actually. Okay, so this eta 1, say, so you can write as 1 by omega 1, okay, integral 0 to t. So the load n1 of tau, so sine and it's undamped problem, so t minus tau d tau. So you already know the solution for this thing, and similarly say eta 2, say, okay, so this will be 1 by omega 2 0 to t n2 of tau sine omega 2 t minus tau d tau. Okay, so you can solve by follow, right, by using all these expressions. Eta 1 and eta 2 has been found out. Then finally our q's. Okay, so this you can find out at the nodal points, that is q2 q3. Okay, so this you can solve finally you see, you multiply this this model, this one, so you will get our q1 and q2. So you can find out, you see, by solving this expression, say, so response at the node 2 and then the response at node 3. Okay, so this way you can solve FEM problem in this our structural dynamics. So if you have, so the steps are very simple, they are all straightforward. So whatever problem you want to solve, so first thing you divide them into, you see, the number of elements. You find out shape functions and other things you decide. So you first assemble mass matrix, you assemble stiffness matrix, then you solve as the free vibration problem. So this you have to solve, get all the natural frequencies, mode shapes and other. Then you find out the amplitude of the mode shapes, say, by orthogonalizing with respect to the mass matrix. It should be unity there. So once you got this one, say, so then the whole problem has been broken into single degree of freedom systems. So now the single degree of freedom system equations, which are uncoupled, you can solve using closed form Duhamel's integral, or whatever the method you want, you follow, right? You can use this one also. So this is one way. Or other way is no need to do all these things itself. Okay, see, like here what we are doing is, so we have this expression, say, so m u double dot, okay, plus k times u is equal to f of t. So this was our equation actually. So one way to solve is so this equation itself, say, you directly solve in the central difference or finite difference, okay, in time. This is one way. So here we are not interested in finding the eigenvalues, eigenvectors or anything like that. So directly you solve actually. The another way is you find out this free vibration and then you do all those calculations. Okay, then the forced vibration. So this way you can solve. Both the methods will give you followed, right, the same the answer actually. But here suppose when you are doing for simple problems, say like this, the stepped bar or simple degree of freedoms are very small. So then both of them may be you will not find any advantage actually. Both of them may be better. But sometimes what happens is which is more computationally expensive. Which is more computational expensive, So one is assemble mass matrix, assemble stiffness matrix, and then you solve by finite difference. Okay, no need to worry about natural frequency, mode shapes, and other things. Another way is once you assemble mass matrix, stiffness matrix, then you do free vibration, you calculate eigenvalue, eigenvectors, and then you do this forced vibration and get the solution actual. Okay, so which is more advantageous, the first one or the second one? Which is a more advantageous? So in the first case, what we are doing, you are not finding natural frequency, you are not finding mode shapes, just mass matrix stiffness, you assemble and then you solve directly with the finite difference. Second case, you are doing free vibration and then forced vibration. Okay, so which is easier, which is more better?
So finite difference method.
No, please tell me one by one. Tell me.
So finite difference method is more easier, sir, compared to second one.
Finite difference is more easy because, but the why finite difference is more easy? See what happens if you find a difference. If it is more easy, say what is the negative thing with free vibration, forced vibration? See, when you do free vibration, say what you have to do some additional steps. Once you got mass matrix, stiffness matrix, you have to once again solve this eigenvalue problem. So more number of computations are there. Okay, in finite difference, the computations are very less actually. It's just a straightforward kind of a thing which you have itself. Okay, but you have to invert mass matrix. You followed it previously. We have written those equations also. So all those things have to be taken care. But generally, engineers prefer which method, the first or the second one? Essential in structural engineering, which method we prefer?
Second one is preferred.
Why? See, if you are doing earthquake response of some buildings, okay, so which method you use? The second one only we use. For what is the main advantage?
So because we need natural frequency, sir.
Now, what do you do with those natural frequencies? So you would have studied, right, in earthquake engineering, you followed, right, in IS code also. When you are designing any building, say you remember mode participation factors, modal mass, you followed. So
Yes,
sometimes, so now what is the advantage of all those things? If it is 1,000 degree of freedom system, say, no need to get a contribution from all the 1,000 modes. You remember, right? The modal mass will be the first 5 modes or first 3 modes itself will be 95% of the solution is controlled by the first few modes itself. Okay, so no need to do this 1,000 degree, the first few modes, it gives some kind of a physical the feeling also to the problem. Okay, and then you can do the what is that, you can neglect some of the modes, something physical, the meaning also will be there. Now in the finite difference method, you will not see all these details, just you blindly you follow it, we solve it, and then we try to get the solution. Physics will be a little bit missing actually. Okay, so but in engineering, you followed, right, we prefer this itself. And sometimes see, like for example, if the load is not specified, if it is specified as a function of time only, you can compute. But if the load is given in terms of a response spectra, then how you are going to do it? You remember, right, in IS code they give the load is specified as a response spectra, which is a function of the natural frequency. So here this method may be advantageous. Okay, so this has its own advantages, That also has this one advantage. But anyway, now in the seismology, when you are modeling the earth and other things, you know, you don't do this free vibration. You see, this the first one only is widely used actually, essentially in wave propagation approaches. Okay, so when you are modeling, you know, we use the first approach itself for the wave equations and other things. Okay, so now this way, you know, so you can solve a lot of interesting problems are there in textbooks. You know, you can refer to any FEM textbooks, Bathe or you know, finite elements, you know, in dynamics thing, or cookbooks, say, or any textbook. If you see, they will give you a lot of you know, practice problems. So the simple beams, you know, subjected to dynamic loads, say. So you can try with the FEM. You know, you can write your own MATLAB code. I think some textbooks they give some of the codes also, Fortran or some codes, you know, in the backside. So you try this some of these you know, interesting problems using this finite element. Now in FEM, there are some more things are there which are not required as far as this course is concerned. You know, you would have seen the substructure method. You know, there are some things are there. We may discuss this in the end actually. Okay, if time permits. You know, substructure method, then static condensation. You know, these are some techniques are there. So these methods are also, you know, widely used actually. So these things are used, you know, to decrease you know, the degrees of freedom. See, if you are having a, you know, a degree of freedom, you see 1000, you know, like you see this comes out, you know, like for example, as already I told you it in earthquake engineering, say if you have a building with you know, 10,000 degrees of freedom. Okay, now if you want to study for earthquakes, say, see how many natural frequencies will be really contributing. You remember it, the modal mass. If you try to find out, the first mode itself will have, you know, 80% or you know, 90% itself. So you know, so 10,000 degree of freedom, you know, it is you followed it, it is very time consuming and it is not required also. So sometimes what one does is, you know, we neglect actual some degrees of freedom, you know, try to, you know, decrease our size of the problem, and then, you know, you solve it in a efficient, you know, the factor. So static condensation method, Guyon's reduction. Okay, these are some names are there. So these are some methods are there. Okay, so how to reduce the degrees of freedom, and then, you know, how do we do this in a nice format. So many techniques are there in FEM, but these things are widely used for you know, in many, you know, structures essentially. So like, you know, aircraft structures or even in buildings, large degrees of freedom, you know. So these type of techniques helps you know, like soil structure interaction when people do. So they will be used. But anyway, in our wave propagation, you see, for this we use the first one, and we will include all the possible degrees of freedom itself. Okay, so this fine. So with this, you know, we will close our finite element method. So it is like a crash course. Okay, so finite element, I hope all of you have already studied FEM. So you know, you can go pick up any textbook and you can read, and then, you know, you can you know, try on your own. You can write a small you know, the course itself. Okay, so fine. So now next we go towards, so we have discussed you know, so finite difference we have seen. Okay, then we have seen pseudo spectral method also. Okay, then we came to FEM actually. Okay, so these two are based on strong form equation. The fundamental difference is there, whereas FEM is based on, you see, the weak form. Okay, this is the most you know, the important thing. Now let us see our spectral element method. Okay, so generally, you know, in spectral element method, say, see, it is a misnomer actually. What we are going to discuss, it is not even a spectral element. It is only the higher order, you know, the FEM. But there are some small differences are there, how you know, a finite element does and how spectral element does. But if you see, you know, in Google, or if you see the literature, say, there is one more spectral element method which is used by, you know, the aerospace and other things also have developed. What they do is, you know, they don't they use a combination of you know, this FEM and Fourier transforms. So this is a different method, but they also call this a spectral element. But you know, see, instead of writing in terms of, you know, the time domain, say, so they solve in frequency domain. So in frequency domain, say, so you will be having mu double dot kind of a thing. So you have m omega square, then k times omega. The Fourier transforms are used, and then they do. So this is also sometimes is known as the spectral element method. Okay. So this is widely used in aerospace. Okay, the blast problems or something where the frequencies will be some gigahertz or you followed 10 to the power of cube or 10 to the power of 4. So this missile and very high frequencies will be there. So where these type of methods are there. Okay. But what we are going to discuss, although we are calling it as a spectral element method, but there is no frequency domain or there is no Fourier series. It is essentially, the higher order, you see the FEM. So the word I don't know, this spectral element itself is a misleading thing actually. Okay, to call this method as spectral element. No. So now here in space, say yes, the spectral element method say. So the starting point is same as as already I told, it is essentially FEM only. Okay, but higher order. And another most important thing is in FEM, what is integration, what method you use to evaluate a numerical integral? In FEM, what is the method we use? To integrate any function like stiffness matrix, mass matrix, you have to integrate, right? What is the method we use in FEM? Now, how did we evaluate these integrals? Now, how did we evaluate this integral in FEM? So we discussed, right, previous class, what method we used? So you people are there. Now, what methods we used previously?
Sir, Gauss quadrature and all.
Gauss quadrature only. Okay. See, we already discussed, right? The Gauss points I already followed, right? We discussed a long point time also. So we use this Gauss quadrature method, in FEM. Now in spectral elements, say same as finite element only, we use this higher order polynomials. And in spectral elements, the only difference is we use Lagrange polynomials. Okay, this is essentially. Or sometimes Chebyshev also is there. Okay, so we used for our shape functions to represent a function here. And another thing is when it comes to the integration, say we use a special the scheme here. We don't use Gauss quadrature, we use Gauss-Lobato legendre. Okay, so which it is also known as GLL quadrature. Okay, so this is a very special the integration scheme in spectral element. They use it. The main advantage of this is the mass matrix becomes the diagonal actually. You followed. So now a spectral element is same as whatever we discussed in FEM only, but only thing is the higher order things are there. We use Lagrange or Chebyshev polynomials are there, but most of the spectral elements, people these Lagrange polynomials only we use. There is also Chebyshev also one can use. And then coming to the integration scheme, instead of Gaussian quadrature, so here we use Gauss-Lobato GLL quadrature itself. So it has some advantages. The mass matrix becomes the diagonal. Okay. So these are some advantages of this method itself. So now the starting point is anyway, so let us discuss this one-dimensional wave equation, say. Okay, so if you see this 1D wave equation, which already we have written, so rho of x, so dou square u say x comma by dou t square minus dou by dou x. So this is a shear modulus which we have. So dou u x comma t versus dou x. So is equal to, you see, we have this source function. Okay, f of t. So this is our one-dimensional the wave equations. Okay, so now here so this equation only, you see, the one-dimensional wave equations here. So now in spectral element also we use this. This is a strong form equation. So this is essentially a strong form. So now in a spectral elements, similar to our finite element, we use a weak form equation. Okay, so already we have written this weak form equation, but we will just once again. So if we define a new test function, say, so v of x as some test function, some arbitrary. Okay, it may be arbitrary test function, so it can be arbitrary also. So you multiply these equations on both the sides. So and this is our domain. Okay, so if I denote this as a domain, this itself. So now so if I write, so this weak form equations, so we are integrating over the entire domain. So rho u double dot, say, okay, so dx once again over the domain. So v delta, so mu into delta u, okay, multiplied by dx is equal to so v times f dx. So this is our weak form, the equations of motion actual. Okay, so which is valid for any test function, v. This is anyway test function. So this is how we write. And now this portion, say, we can do the integration by parts actual. Okay, like same previously we have done in detail. So this function, say, if we integrate by parts, and if I see the surface of the domain or the boundary. So if we do integration by parts, so we have same equation which we did, the rho into v into u double dot into d omega. So we have this once again with respect to this one. So now, so that if you do integration by parts, so we have so mu do u d sorry d this one. Oh, sir, I think I made a point. So this is our this equation plus. So this derivative says, so delta v mu and I say delta u. Okay, so d omega is equal to, right hand side is anyway same, so v times f into say d omega. Okay, so we write our equations like this. So now if integrate by parts, so you will get two extra terms actually. What is this term indicates? So previously also we have discussed what does this term indicates. See, mu is a shear modulus. What does this term indicates? So previously also we wrote, right, in FEM also. What does this term indicates? Now, what does this term indicate?
Stiffness matrix.
No, this integral is with respect to what?
Surface.
That is near the boundary actually. You followed. So this is essential if you
Boundary
integrate this one
conditions.
over the boundary. So this is so this equation, say, already we have written previously. So this equation turns out to be like this only. You followed. So in one dimension, say how many boundaries it has, it's a 1D problem. So we have x is equal to 0. Another boundary is that x is equal to L actually. Okay. So this becomes v into u mu delta times u. So this you have to evaluate at x is equal to 0 and x is equal to L. What is this mu into delta u? What is mu into delta u? That is mu into dou u by dou x. What is mu into dou u by dou x? In 1D, what is this mu into dou u by dou x? Previously we have written, right? What is this quantity? See, u is the displacement. So what is strain? See, in one dimension, what is the strain? If u is the displacement, one second. Yes, yes. Okay. So now what is do you what is a strain?
Strain is dou u by dou x.
If you multiply strain by shear modulus, what you will get?
Stress.
You will get what is epsilon into, you followed, right? The modulus.
Stress we will get.
No, it is nothing but stress only. Okay. So now what does it tells you? So this boundary condition, what it will give you?
Stress at the boundaries.
So now suppose if the stress is surface is free surface, now what happens? If it is free surface, what will be the stress?
There will be no stress. It will be.
So now let us say this is also free, this is also free actual. So now, so this quantity automatically becomes 0 when the surface is free. Okay. So that integral also, so that also it vanishes actually. So this is what we said in the previous class also when we discussed about FEM say. So because the surface is free, the stresses becomes 0 automatically, it evaluate, it goes away. So now our equation becomes, like this. So this one, so the equation becomes V into U double dot. So we have dx plus, so we have this omega. So delta V, then mu delta U say dx. So this becomes, V into F times, dx. Okay, so this is our equation. So because that integral over that T over the boundary is actual equation. Same as what we did in our the FEM. Okay, so there is no difference between here this approach between FEM and the spectral element. Okay, so now here also what we try to do is so if you have a domain say, so which is some x, this x, this is our domain. So now same as in our FEM say, so we divide this into number of elements. Okay, so this is our original domain. So let us say we divide this into some elements say. Okay, so this is x naught or x1. We start as x1, then x2, then x3, and then x4. So these are our 4 this one say. Okay, so this is my element number 1, element number 2, then element number 3. So 3 elements are there. Okay, so now similarly in our FEM, like what we do is this whole element actual. Okay, so we then map it to -1 to 1. So this is one, same as in FEM. These advantages you followed, right? It will be there in evaluating our integrals. Okay, so these are local coordinates, global coordinates. We have already discussed in detail. So how to write the shape functions in local, then in global coordinates. How to write this also we have seen. So this is the first step actual. Okay, you divide into elements and then you map it also. So now this integral, so you have to evaluate over each, the element. So this becomes, this one. So V into U double dot dx plus this one. So del V. So mu into del U dx. Okay, is equal to so we have this one. So V into F into dx. Okay, so this you have to evaluate at the each the element. So this you have to do. So for E is elements, they go from 1 up to NE. Okay, so you have to do for all the elements actual. So now here so what we do is, so this transformation, so this mapping, that is from this element level to this one. So when we do this mapping say, okay, so this becomes so we have our original domain is the omega here. Now so this becomes so we to the element domain itself. So now our mapping say, so we can define as so delta E, which is the length of an element. So psi plus 1 by 2 plus xc. Okay, so where delta E is anyway the length of the element itself. So this is the length, and xc is the left point. Of this element number. Okay, so this is how we transform. So that is from original domain to -1 to 1. Okay, so this is how we transform this itself. So now so there are two elements are, so now two node points we have taken here. So now here for interpolation say, so now in our spectral element method, what we do is we use this Lagrangian polynomials. So we use this Lagrangian polynomials itself for interpolation this one. So xe of psi say, okay, inside in any element. So we write like this. So a is equal to 1 to na. So we have na of psi multiplied by so this is how we write. So this xe of a say, so these are nothing but you see the nodal the points. Okay, so we write like this. So now for one dimension say, so already so for n is equal to 1, so in one dimension, so the Lagrange polynomials we can write like this. So already the expression for Lagrange polynomials. So li, so so li of n say, so we have j is equal to 0, j is not equal to I, so psi minus psi j by psi I say minus psi j. So this is our Lagrange the polynomial. So now for n is equal to 1 we write our polynomials li l1 naught of psi. So this becomes psi minus 1 by minus 1 minus of plus 1. So this becomes minus psi minus 1 by 2 and l1 say. So this becomes a psi minus of minus 1 minus of the minus 1. So this becomes psi plus 1 by 2. So these are our Lagrange the polynomials here. So now our shape functions will be the same this itself. So n1 becomes l01 and our n2 say this becomes l1 1 itself. So now so we can write xk of psi as so a is equal to 1 to 2. So na say psi xk of a itself. Okay, so now you can derive, so this we can also write this expression as l01 say. Okay, so 2 for k plus l11 x2 say of k itself. So if you substitute this expression minus the psi minus 1 by 2 plus x2 of k psi plus 1 by 2. Okay, so if you do all those things, finally you will get this expression only, the transformation itself. Okay, so where delta is this is xk plus 1 minus xk. So these are the the shape functions for the one dimensional thing itself. So now here one most important thing is, so now in spectral elements, so we are mapping from the original global coordinate to local coordinate system. So here also same as in finite element we require this Jacobi actually. Okay, the Jacobian matrix. So which is when you are transforming to global to local. So to do all those the integrals and others. So suppose if I am having integrals say, so I have to integrate this function g of x in my element say. Okay, so this we have to convert into this one. So you see, so g of psi, so dx by d psi and then d psi. So this is integral. So minus 1 to 1. So g of psi. So this is my Jacobian matrix. Okay, d psi, where this Jacobian matrix is. So this is you followed, right? So of psi by using d psi, where we can also define the several quantities, some j, this one which is nothing but determinants of this j matrix. So in FEM also you do all these steps itself. Okay, so now in spectral elements so we also write this as so je. So for this problem you see, so d x of e by d psi. Okay, and this is determinant. So this one will be so dxc by d psi. Okay, so this is our Jacobian, another one. So now so we can find out, so dxc say, so this is Jacobian matrix. So dx of psi by d of psi. So this becomes a is equal to 1 to na. So which is a derivative of our shape functions itself. Okay, So these how we find out this is Jacobian matrix in our spectral element. It is same as in FEM also, but here everything is from -1 to 1 itself. Okay. Now this Lagrange polynomials say, so they have a very the important property here for Lagrange polynomial. What is the property of important property of Lagrange polynomials? Now, see when I is equal to j, what happens? These polynomials.
So it becomes 1, sir, when I is equal to j.
Becomes 1 at other points. Previously also we have said, okay, they are also like our cardinal the functions. So Li say of psi j. So this becomes so delta ij. So these are property of our Lagrange polynomials. Okay. So now you've followed it. So these are the shape functions. So now in our spectral elements, so same thing we use for the interpolation of elements also. So if you have display, say, so here also we write is like this: I is equal to 0 to n. So these are at the coordinates psi I. So Li say, right? Psi. So the displacement also we are representing everything in terms of this Lagrangian polynomials. So now you can find out even its derivatives also. So so this is derivative say. So this also becomes I is equal to 0 to n. So we have uv psi I. So Li dash of the psi. So this also we can write the derivatives. So if I know the derivative of the Lagrange polynomials, I can find out the derivative of displacement itself. And now here the most important thing is now the integration. So when you do this when you substitute this and then try to do, we'll have a lot of integrations will be there. So this integration say in that this elemental domain, this local coordinate system. So we use this as already I told in spectral element method. We use this Gaussian GLL the quadrature. So this is same as our the Gaussian quadrature itself. So this we write as I is equal to 0 to n. So wi say g of psi i's. Okay, so where wi's are nothing but the weights, and this psi I say these are nothing but your the Gauss points. So here the main you see the difference comes from spectral element and then you see this finite element. So now generally in ordinary finite elements we use the Gauss quadrature. Okay, so already we have seen this Gauss quadrature itself. So you remember, right, what is the basic philosophy behind the Gaussian quadrature? Previously also we have discussed. Okay, what are the Gauss points and other things we have seen. So what do you do in Gauss quadrature? Previously we have seen, right, a trapezoidal rule. What's the advantage of Gauss quadrature? See, we have done some problems also. No, what did we do? How did we find out weights and then these Gauss points? You remember how did we find out the weights and then the Gauss points, where they should be located? See, like for example, if I have a cubic polynomial, say, how did we find out? You remember, right? Previously we have done some examples also. See, what's the essence of Gaussian quadrature? See, if I have any function say like this, to find out integral, the area under this function say, what does you do? We discussed it long back. If you do by trapezoidals, you divide this into number of rectangles and then you solve. In Gaussian quadrature, what do you do?
We use the Gauss points.
Yeah, what is that you find out? The Gauss points or something. How do we estimate it? See, we have to estimate the Gauss point also, and we have to find out even its weight also. So how many unknowns are there? So if there are 2 Gauss points, say, so that means 2 times n unknowns are there. You followed, right? So we have you have to find out x also, and you also have to find out the weight of that point itself. So there are basically you see 2n the number of unknowns are there. So how did we find out this one? You remember long back, so if you are solving 2n number of unknowns, say, So then you should have, you know, a 2n means, you know, 2 points Gauss point 2 formula. So 2 2s are 4 are there. So you remember, so we fitted a, you know, polynomial of size, you see, a1x a2x square plus a3, you know, x cube actual. Okay, so if there are 2 Gauss points, which means, you know, 4 points are there. So then we found out this 4 weights, you know, the cubic polynomial. You followed. So Gaussian, for, you know, so that is how, you know, we found out this Gauss points and then their weightages also. So like for example, you know, if it is a Gauss 3-point formula, say, okay, so which is, you know, only 3 points are there. So where the points are located, you followed. So the last time we had made a table also. Okay, so the points in the first point is will be located at 0. Other points will be, you know, 3 by 5, and their weights also, you know, will be 8 by 9, and then here it will be, you see, 5 by 9. Okay, so these are the 3-point Gauss formula. Suppose if it is a 4-point Gauss formula, say, from -1 to 1, the region is -1 to 1. So the Gauss points, say, so the 4 Gauss points will be there. They are located at, you know, the first one, say 3 by 7 minus, you know, 2 by 7, you know, 6 by root 5, or if you can write in terms of these numbers also. The second one will be, say, plus or minus 1. So 3 by 7, you know, plus 2 by 7, 6 by 5. So these are the Gauss points actual. And then their weights also will be, you see, 18 plus root 30 by 36, you know. The other root will be, you know, 18 minus root of 30 by 36. Okay, so many textbooks they will give, they will write in terms of like this, or they will give even, you know, 0.62, you know, like this also, by solving the square roots and other things also. Okay, so if you want to find out -1 to 1 4-point Gauss formula, say, so the Gauss points are located like this actually. Okay, so this is your function, and this is -1, and this is +1, say. So this is my region where I have to do my integral. So if I use a 4-point Gauss formula, so my Gauss points will be, you followed it, somewhere here actually. Okay, so now I have to find out the weights also will be given. So the 4-point Gauss formula, say, it is accurate for, you know, polynomials up to, you know, of course 4 points are there. So 2 4s are, you know, 8 unknowns are there here up to 7th order actually. Okay, so they say that, you know, the Gaussian quadrature rule set is very accurate for polynomials, you know. So if n is order, say, the Gauss points are there, so 2n minus 1. So this is a thumb rule because you find out from those polynomials itself. So now in spectral elements, we use this different, you know, the quadrature rule here, which we call as, you know, the Gaussian Lobato, you know, that's legendary quadrature. Okay, the GLL quadrature. So we will use this, you know, the GLL quadrature. Okay. So now in the GLL quadrature, say, it is basically, it comes from this legendary polynomials. Okay. So we write our legendary polynomials, you know, so Pn, say, of x, you know, so 1 by, say, 2 to the power of n. So we have n factorial. So d to the power of n by, you see, n. So psi square minus 1 whole to the power of n. So these are our, you know, the legendary polynomials. So now the weights, you know, of this legendary Gauss GLL quadrature, say, so you can find out from this Wi, n plus 1 Pn whole square not equal to plus or minus 1 itself, and Wi, say, is equal to, you know, so n by etc 2 by, you know, so n into n plus 1 plus or minus 1 itself. So these are the weights of the polynomial. Okay, so now you know, so here the most important thing is, you know, in the Gauss legendary Lobato, this one, say, so we are including even the endpoints also, that is plus or minus 1 are also included here. So in the Gauss points, you know, like previously we have seen, the Gauss points will be located, you know, the endpoints are not located in the calculation, only, you know, the Gauss points will be somewhere, you see, in between -1 to 1 itself. Now in the Gaussian-Lobato legendary quadrature, say, so what we do is, if it is a 4-point formula, so 2 points will be automatically located, at the end point. So these are also included in our, calculating the integral. So this itself is my first GLL point. This is of course the last one, and I have 1 point here and another 1 point here. This is like a 4-point, the quadrature rule. So like for example, this is the 4-point quadrature rule, say, okay, so the points will be located here. So like these are the Gaussian points for 4-point rule, okay, and these are the weights actual, okay, for 4th order. Now suppose same things if I do this GLL quadrature, say, so where my points will be located as the first 2 points will be 1/5 itself, and its weightage, say, will be 5/6, okay, and is also 4-point formula, and both the endpoints are also included. So obviously I will have plus or minus 1, and its weightage will be 1/6 itself here. So this is my GLL formula, 4-point GLL formula, and this is the 4-point, you see, the Gauss formula actually. You followed. So now you can see now what's the difference between Gaussian quadrature and Gaussian GLL quadrature. So now here in Gauss points, say, so they are not located, the endpoints are not included in the calculations, but here the endpoints are included in the calculations itself. So now what happened, so its accuracy, say, so here the Gaussian quadrature is accurate for all polynomials less than 2n minus 1, okay, but whereas because we are including this the endpoints also into our calculations, so its accuracy is decreased actual. So because instead of, so here we are having, if there are 2 Gauss points, we are having 4 unknowns, because the weights are also treated as unknowns here, but here although there are 4 Gauss points, say, okay, but these endpoints are already fixed actually, they are known to you. So the accuracy will be 2n minus 3. So which is more accurate, Gaussian quadrature or GLL quadrature?
Gaussian quadrature.
Which one?
Gaussian quadrature.
So Gaussian quadrature is much more, this one, but whereas GLL quadrature, say, so this one will be, you followed, right? This, so the accuracy will go down like anything. So this is a 2n minus 1, but this is 2n minus 3 itself, okay. So these are 2 different things, but the advantage here is when you include the endpoints, you have some advantages here. So in the spectral element, you followed it, the accuracy is lower than when you compare with the finite element here itself. So here, but the advantages are like this. So now when you use this GLL quadrature, say, so automatically the mass matrices and others we can see. So now this function we use. So now GLL quadrature. So now if you see the mass matrix, which is given by that first integral, okay, so that is this integral. So that is rho of x, v of x, and then you see u double dot, say, of x dx. So this is the first integral which we have to calculate for our row matrix, this mass matrix, okay. So this becomes over an element. So now we map this to -1 to 1 itself, okay. So we map to this elemental level psi, v of psi, and then we have this u double dot e of psi, and then we have this Jacobian actually. Okay, so this is our matrices. So now because everything we are representing in Lagrange polynomials, so you substitute all those things also. So this integral becomes -1 to 1. So rho of psi, and then so this expression, say, so I is equal to 0 to n. Okay, so vi li of psi. So this is our first term for the test function. So this also we are taking same as the Lagrange polynomials. It's the second one, so u double dot, okay. So this also we are expressing at elemental level. So j is equal to 0 to n. So u double dot j, then we have lj of psi, okay, and we have this Jacobian matrix. So d psi. So this is my integral. So now this when I use this GLL quadrature, say, to evaluate this function, so this entire integral becomes a summation actually, okay, over this GLL points. So this becomes n is equal to k is equal to 0 to n, okay, rho of psi of k. So these are our GLL points, and weights will be there. So wk, so these are the weights of that Gaussian quadrature, you know. And then we have vi li of psi k. Okay, so I is equal to 0 to n itself, and then we have you know, this term also, j is equal to 0 to n u double dot j lj of psi k. Okay, then we have this Jacobian matrix. Okay, so all the terms are there itself. So now this integral has been replaced with this GLL, you know, the summation, and these are all the Gauss points. Okay, so this Gauss points. So now what happens in this expression is, you know, because this now this test functions say. Okay, so v of x, these are all the test functions. So in finite element, what type of test functions we used, you remember? So in FEM, what type of test functions we used at weight functions? These arbitrary test functions. When we wrote this integral, these equations of motion, say, what type of test functions we assumed? You remember what is the function we used for test functions?
Polynomials.
No, we have taken them as same as polynomials only, but we have taken same as you know, LIs itself. You remember the Lagrange polynomials itself. Okay. So if I take these test functions as, you know, vi's as 1, the unit, which means, you know, my test functions will be simply my Lagrange polynomials itself. Okay, same as in FEM. That's what. So this method is known as, if I take test functions as same as you know, the functions which you are using for interpolation. So what do you call this method? See, this is my v of x. Now if I take v1, v0, v1, all of them are 1, 1, 1. So my test functions will simply be the Lagrange polynomials. So the same Lagrange polynomials are even used for the interpolation of, you know, these functions itself. So when both of them are same, say, okay. So what do you call this method? Now what do you call this method? Same in FEM also we did the same thing. What do you call this one? Same as the polynomials. What do you call this method when you use the same polynomials for a test function and this one? What do you call this method?
Galerkin method.
Galerkin method only. You followed. So now whatever we are doing, nothing, same as your FEM only. Only thing is GLL quadrature is something new, that's all. Okay. So now this becomes like a Galerkin method. So now our equation becomes, you know, k is equal to 0 to n. So we have rho of psi k. Omega k will be there, and then we have so vi's are all, you know, 1 0 0 kind of a thing we have. So this becomes, you know, li psi k. So this goes from I is equal to 0 to n, and then we have you know, so j is equal to 0. So u double dot j. So we have li psi k. So this is one term, and this is you know, another term which we have, then multiplied by our Jacobian matrix. Okay, so these are the terms here. So now here you know, so when you do this one, say, what's the property of Lagrange polynomials? What's the property of this? Now what is the property of Lagrange polynomial? Now previously we have told, right, li of psi of k. So what is the value? When I is equal to k, what's its value?
So it will
1.
be 1.
Other points when I is not equal to k?
It will be
0.
0.
0. So so this equation, what happens is you know, so k is equal to 0 to n, say. Okay, so rho of psi of k, of course omega, these are the weight functions. Okay, so these are the weights of our GLL quadrature. So this becomes, you know, I is equal to 0 to n, so delta ik. Okay, so this becomes, you know, this one, and then we have, say, j is equal to 0 to n, so u double dot j. delta, jk, okay, direct delta functions, and of course we have this Jacobian matrix will be there. Okay, so this expression. So now finally, if you dump everything, say this expression, it turns out to be like this. So sigma, j is equal to 0 to n. Okay, because of this, the u double dot j. Okay, so sigma, I is equal to 0 to n. J is equal to 0 to n. So rho k, wk, okay, jk, delta ik, and then delta, jk. So this is our the final, the expression comes here actually. So now what is a comment on the mass matrix? How do we, so this expression, say I can write this as uj double dot j m ij at the elemental level. Okay, so I can also write like this. So where my elemental mass matrix is, say, so this will be, rho I, this wi. So I have this Jacobian also multiplied by, you see, delta ij. See now what is a delta ik, delta jk? What is the value of this? When I multiply two Kronecker deltas, what happens?
Delta ij.
It becomes a delta ij. So this is my mass matrix actual. Okay, the final, the element of this one multiplied by u double dot j. So now what is that you have observed here? Now what type of mass matrix we are having?
Diagonal.
Mass matrix now it is completely.
Diagonal.
It is a diagonal mass matrix. But whereas in FEM, what type of mass matrix you got?
Consistent mass matrix.
But consistent means off diagonal terms are not zero. Okay, but lumped mass only it is possible. But in spectral element method, so this is the fundamental difference, between spectral element and then your FEM. Okay, what is the so why did you have, how this mass matrix became diagonal here? The methodology was all same whatever you did in finite element. So here also we used the same element mapping, this that same shape functions also, everything was more or less same actually. But the most important thing, what happened here, why suddenly it became diagonal?
Because of use of Lagrangian polynomials.
So Lagrange polynomials, there also we use Lagrange polynomials only. Okay, but the here what is the most important thing we took here? Why mass matrix became diagonal?
Delta function.
Which one?
Because
The most
delta function.
delta. Where is delta here?
So your test functions and
So test functions in FEM also we took as same only. In FEM also maybe the notation was slightly different. So there also we took as a phi only. You followed in FEM. So it was all same only. Test functions are if I am taking as VI, amplitudes are one only, but they are taken as same Li only, which are anyway used to represent the function. So these two are same itself. You followed. So both of them are same actually. But the only why this became diagonal, the main reason was, most important thing is the GLL quadrature actually followed. So here what we have done is, this is a Lagrange polynomial. So Lagrange polynomials, we have that property is there, Li of psi k or whatever here, but the collocation points, the points where we are doing the interpolation, that points are same as, your GLL points itself. So the psi case, whatever we are doing, say, so now, so the function we are interpolating at GLL point. So the interpolating functions actually. So or you can say the collocation points. Okay, the collocation points and GLL points, all of them are same actually. Wherever you are, so you are, the polynomial say, so the whole function, so you are having a polynomial like this actual, okay, in a domain. So now what going for a equidistant or whatever we have done previously. So this interpolating point, this collocation points, so we are taking same as the GLL points itself, and then we are using the Lagrange polynomials there itself to do this interpolation. And then when we merge with this Gaussian quadrature, say, this Gaussian Lobato legendary quadrature, so automatically you follow, right? Everything becomes diagonal actually. Now in FEMs, it will not become diagonal. Why? See, in finite element, you will not get diagonal. Why? You will not get any diagonal mass matrix. Where are Gauss points located?
So they are not located at the ends.
So Gauss points, where they are located? See, Gauss points are located at which place? So Gauss points are located at which place?
So minus 1 by root 3 to 1 by root 3. So
Just 1 second. No, class long. See where Gauss points are located in this one. Now, see in finite element method, see whenever you where are you suppose your function is defined at which place?
so it is within minus 1 to 1 and endpoints are not included.
So the endpoints are, see, the function is defined at the endpoints also, right? See, when you are having any function, say, so we have the, when element is like this, right? So both the endpoints are also element your nodes. So your first node also will be here. Second node will be at this place actually. But your Gauss points, where they are located? They are not located at your nodes at all. So your Gauss points are somewhere, in between actually followed. But in a spectral element method, what is happening? So your nodes also, your GLL point also, all of them are same everywhere actually. So your function also is defined at those points. The endpoints also your function is defined. So in GLL quadrature, since you have included the endpoints also, say, so automatically you followed it. This delta ij comes, and then your mass matrix becomes, the completely, you see, the diagonal itself. You understand? So why mass matrix becomes a diagonal in a spectral element? See why it becomes a diagonal now.
So GLL point, Gauss points, and the endpoints are located at one point.
GLL points, collocation points, where you are interpolating the function. All of them are same, so automatically you followed, right? This, everything collapses into a diagonal mass matrix. So this is the greatest advantage are in spectral element. But accuracy wise, say, which is better, the previous one or this one, FEM or spectral element?
So FEM has better accuracy, sir.
Because we already said, right, 2n minus 1, but here the accuracy is decreased to 2n minus 3 itself. Okay, so these also, the most disadvantage you have with spectral element, but advantage compared to FEM is diagonal mass matrix actual. Okay, so now mass matrix become diagonal. So now what happens to the stiffness matrix? So whether this also will be diagonal, followed, right? What happens actually? So you can evaluate the integral, so this integral, say, okay. So delta dou u by dou x we had. So v of x, mu of x, and then the derivative, say, u of x dx. So this is our integral to calculate our stiffness matrix. So now this also you bring everything to minus 1 to 1 itself. Okay. So over the elemental domain, so this psi. So we have transformed from global coordinates to local coordinates. So v of psi. So dou psi by dou x, mu of psi, and then dou u of psi, and then dou psi by, you see, dou x, and then we have, you see, this is Jacobian actual psi d psi. So this is my matrix here. So now you represent minus 1 to 1, and then you use this Lagrange polynomials, say. So I is equal to 0 to n. So vi li dash of psi. Okay, so this is our the v function. Then we have mu of psi, and then you see j is equal to 0 to n. So uj Lj dash of psi, okay, multiplied by dou psi by dou x whole square actually. So 2 times we have, and j of psi d psi. Okay, so this is my function here. So now if I use GLL quadrature, say, okay, so if I use GLL quadrature, so I have k is equal to 0 to n. Wk are the weights. Then we have, you see, I is equal to 0 to n. So we have, you see, vi Li dash of psi k. Okay, then we have to n, so uj lj dash of psi k, and mu k can be pulled outside. Jacobian square, all these things will be there. Okay, and g of psi, which is a determinant actually. Okay, psi k. So these are the nodes. Okay, GLL nodes. So finally, if you write this entire expression, no, you can write it as in nicely in this format. So uj into, you see, ke ij, where matrix say. Sorry, this becomes I is equal to 0 to n, j is equal to 0 to n, so mu k, omega k, w k. So this matrix, so I j k square, then we have this determinant of this matrix, then li followed a dash of psi k, and then I see ln dash. That's the derivative of our Lagrange polynomial. So these is how the stiffness matrix looks like. And now what is the comment about stiffness matrix, whether it is a diagonal or not diagonal? See, what is the property of Lagrange polynomial? Li of psi k was, when I is equal to k, say, it was basically equal to 1 actual. But now here you are having derivatives. You follow, right? Derivatives of the Lagrange polynomial comes. So automatically what happens is, you will not get any diagonal stiffness matrix. Still it will be non-diagonal actually. Okay, but mass matrix will be diagonal. So stiffness matrix, you don't have any advantage. The same as whatever you struggles in FEM, the same thing is valid here also, but only the mass matrix becomes the perfect diagonal here itself. Okay, so this is how in spectral elements we derive this mass matrix and then the stiffness matrix. So I will stop here. We will continue in our the next class. So if you have anything to ask, you can ask.
Sir, in FEM, if you use lumped mass, the accuracy will decrease, right?